Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Whitmix's webinar this morning, part two of 3D printing digital dentures with Dentca Resins. My name is Bernie Jaroslaw. I'm marketing manager here at Whitmix, and I'll be facilitating this morning's webinar. So I want to begin with a couple housekeeping items. The first thing is that you should see a box on your screen somewhere that will give you an opportunity to type in questions. We will not hear you, but we will see your questions if you type them in, and Cory will answer them at the end of the webinar. Second, if you are a CDT, this will be worth an hour toward your recertification. What you'll need to do is you wait about somewhere between 24 and 48 hours, and you will be sent an email, and the email from us, and the email will contain a short test, and you'll just take that simple test, and we will send you you'll send it back into us, and we'll send you your certificate, which you'll then give to the MBC. And lastly, the webinar is being recorded, so if you don't get a chance to see all of this, or you have peers in the lab that would like to watch the webinar, they'll be able to do so and also get CDT credit within about 24 to 48 hours before that's up on our website. So if you want to see it, go to whitmix.com, webinars, and you will see it, the first one there. So this morning I have the pleasure of introducing Cory Lambertson. Cory is a technical services representative here at Whitmix. As a certified ThreeShape, Roland, and Asiga trainer, he develops and conducts CAD/CAM equipment and software training and provides technical support and assistance to all of our digital customers. Before joining Whitmix, Cory worked for 2 years in his dad's dental laboratory, Heartland Dental Laboratory in Hillsdale, Michigan, as a ThreeShape CAD/CAM technician. Cory received his Bachelor's of Science degree in Finance from Andrews University in Berrien Springs, Michigan. So today, as I mentioned, Cory will be doing part two of the 3D printing digital dentures webinar. In this webinar, Cory will actually demonstrate, instead of using slides, it'll be a live demonstration of how to design a digital denture that's going to be 3D printed using ThreeShape Dental System and the Asiga 3D printers. He'll cover design, and he'll share some printing tips for the Dentca Photopolymer Resin process. So enough from me. Cory, if you're ready, let's talk about 3D printing digital dentures.
Awesome. Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So today's webinar, it's going to be packed with a lot of information. We're going to start off with order form creation inside of the ThreeShape Dental System software. I am using the 2019 beta software. So there are some changes that I'm going to show for when you guys, when 2019 is available, so you'll know what you'll use when we update. From there, we're going to design a denture try-in. We are going to nest the denture try-in in the Asiga Composer software. We will then watch a brief video on how to scan in a adjusted denture try-in that the dentist has used in the patient, made any sort of adjustments that he needed to, rescan that in, and design to that. From there, after the video, we will design a denture base with designed teeth. So base and teeth separate. We will then nest the base in the Composer software and also nest the teeth in the Composer software. From there, we'll conclude our webinar today. And if you have any questions, we'll be able to answer them at that point in time. So for the order form creation inside of the ThreeShape software, of course, you're going to go up to the top left to create your order. We'll wait for this to load for everybody to see. There we go. All right. So from here, over on the left-hand side, you can choose your operator like normal inside of ThreeShape. You can choose if you're sending this to an external laboratory. But most importantly, you'll put in the last name of the patient. So I'm going to call this Parker, first name Peter. And if you have any clinical photos you want attached in the design process, now would be your opportunity. And then if you had any comments in the prescription form, then you'd place that in here like normal. For the order number up top, you would place either the prescription number, patient information, like patient name, or case pan number, or you can even state exactly what you are going to be designing. So I'm going to put in try in demo. Now for the actual order form creation, it's pretty simple. If you select on the first tooth of the arch that you want for the denture, if you hold the shift key and select on the last tooth of the arch you want for that, for the denture, they'll actually highlight all the teeth for you automatically, which is really helpful, so you don't have to select each tooth to highlight it. From there, I'm going to do the same for the lower arch. I'm going to hold down the shift key and select the last tooth of that arch that I want for the denture. From here, for a try-in denture, I'm going to go over, I'm going to select on gingiva. I'm going to make sure that the first option is selected. This is for denture design. The other two is for gingiva for, let's say if it was an all-on-4 restoration, or if we wanted to add artificial gingiva to a bridge. So the first option is under the denture design. From here, I'm going to go to the green plus. I'm going to change the material to model material. This is extremely important that we do this. And this is what's going to tell the ThreeShape software that this is going to be designed for 3D printing. It's kind of confusing at first on why they would do that, but you have to do it. If you choose another material, like for example zirconia, or if you had PMMA listed, it's actually going to separate your STL file into multiple layers, and it's not going to export it out as one monolithic device, which is what we want. So I'm going to select model material, and then also under the green plus, I'm going to choose what type of denture I'm designing. So if you are using 2018 and previous, you would choose injection molding to create your denture try-in. This is that monolithic denture. For 2019, they actually changed the name. If you remember in my previous webinar, they changed it to monoblock. So I'm going to select on monoblock, and that's all you have to do for the denture base. From here, I'm going to go up to anatomy, and it's going to default and place artificial tooth type on there, but we can see that the material is zircon. We want to change that also to model material. From here, we would select OK. And if I had a scanner hooked up, we could go through the scan process. I'm just going to pull up the scan software so you can see what those steps are. So the first step is to scan the lower jaw. You have the ability to trim it. The next step would be scan the upper jaw, and you have the ability to trim it. And then you would scan the upper and lower jaws in occlusion to each other using a wax rim. Those are the 3 steps for scanning. Now, if you do use a tray system, like an impression tray, in the order form, you would have selected impression tray for the scanning option, and then you could actually scan the impressions instead of scanning a traditional model. And if you're using like the UTS CAD impression tray system, they actually have a way that they capture the vertical opening or the bite alignment of the upper and lower arch, and you would just scan that impression tray together at the same time for that. So let's go ahead and let's jump into the try-in design. I actually have a case that is a demo case from ThreeShape. So let's go ahead and design our denture try-in for this patient. So the very first step, it wants us to create the occlusal plane. If you don't have the Ivoclar options enabled on your dongle, you don't have these 2 other boxes over here on the bottom left-hand side. That's for the UTS CAD impression tray system that they offer. If you're using a wax rim, you're going to use the 3-point method. And how this works is I'm going to set a point on the posterior junction line between the upper and lower halves of that wax rim, anterior, and then posterior again. From there, it's going to automatically place your occlusal plane on, and we can see it even marks where our midline is supposed to be. It is helpful if you actually have the dentist create or notch in on the wax rim where that midline is, so you can line this up properly in the design software. So I'm just going to make a little adjustment to it, pull it over just a little bit. This looks pretty good. From here, I'm going to select next, and I'll move on to placing my characteristic points on the models themselves. So the software is going to work you through on the left-hand side, top to bottom, and it actually tells you what step we're on. So right now, it's asking us to place the maxillary points on the models, or on the upper model, and it's asking us to place a point on tuberosity number 1, incisive papilla, and then tuberosity number 2, canine point 1, canine point 2. From there, it's going to ask us to move on to the mandibular points. So it's asking us to place retromolar pad center number 1, retromolar pad buccal, lingual, central ridge point, retromolar pad center number 2, buccal, lingual, and then canine point 1 and canine point 2. From here, we'll select next. It's going to prompt us to draw our upper jaw boundary line around the vestibule of the upper and lower arch. So for this, I'm actually going to, this is showing the scanner texture in red. I'm actually going to turn that off. It's a little bit easier to see. So to draw that boundary line, I'm going to select on the draw option on the left-hand side for the outline. And I'm simply just going to left-click around the vestibule. And of course, be careful not to cross over any frenums. It will, you don't want to impinge on the frenum for your denture design. Create discomfort for your patient. So after you draw this line, you do have the ability to go back and adjust it. And I'll show you some tips when adjusting it. And we can see before this actual line was completed, there was a post-am was not created on this model. If you wanted to place a post-am on this model, you would want to do that before scanning the actual model for this denture. So after I create my base, I selected on the first point that I created, and then it actually completes the line. From here, I have the ability to adjust the points around to help create that peripheral seal. There's another trick. If you're to right click on any point, you have the ability to turn this onto a fast edit spline. You can delete the spline, you can remove a point, you can add a point, but most importantly, you can actually view a local cross section, which is a really cool tool. So if I select on a point, I can actually drag that point across and it shows me a cross-sectional view of the model. So this would help me actually if I needed to place that my boundary line on that mucolabial fold. I have the ability to adjust that at this point in time. So let's go ahead and bring those out just a little bit. All right, so we're gonna do the same for the lower arch. I'll select my draw outline option. All right, from here you can make the adjustments like we made before. All right, from here we'll select next. Move on to surveying the models, and if you want to block out any sort of undercuts, we can do that in the wax trimming option on the next step. Most denture laboratories that I've spoke with that are designing digital dentures, they actually do not block out any sort of undercuts, and they just proceed forward onto this next step. They don't even worry about surveying and blocking out. So I'm just going to select next. If you did want to apply any sort of blockout wax, let's say if you wanted to block out some of this rugae, let's say it was extremely aggressive, you can add a little bit in. And I can even change the size of the circle. So it'll cover more at once. Now the wax knife tools that I'm using are the generic tools that we see across the board inside of the ThreeShape design software. From here we'll select next. We'll do the same for the lower arch. Once again, I'm not going to block out any undercuts for this. So from here, it's actually moving us into the Smile Composer design section. So this is where actually we're going to choose what teeth we want for our design. So if we have multiple brands enabled on the dongle, for example, you would see Vita, Pretty Denta, Allure, Candular, NFC, and then ThreeShape. Let's say if you downloaded the Colzer library or the Ivoclar library, those would then show up in that drop-down list under the provider. I'm just using what is standard under the ThreeShape software. And then if I wanted to change the different sizes of the teeth or the different cards that are available, I'm just going to choose this this box right here. So I can move it left and right, and then there's a drop-down list, and it will show what sizes there are. So right now, for example, this is under delicate, universal, vigorous, individual. Also under each drop-down list, it shows the different sizes that are available for this card. I'm just going to use what was just popped up here. You can spend half hour or an hour changing between different libraries to choose which one you prefer. That is not really important to highlight in the design process because it is all up to your personal opinion. So from here, I went ahead and I applied the teeth library that was just default on here. I'm going to minimize this. Before we actually start designing our teeth and placing our teeth, I'm going to cover what the design tools on the left-hand side are. So the very first tool on the list is called the occlusal plane adjustment. This allows you to move and scale both arches in occlusion. The software doesn't allow you to move the upper arch and lower arch together as a whole separately. I really wish it would. It would help if you're changing the classification of the bite. The next tool is called the arch setup tool. This allows you to shape the form of the arch, move individual teeth, and adjust anterior teeth inclination. And when you do so, all the other teeth will automatically adapt to the moved part, or the moved teeth. We'll demonstrate that here in a moment. The next tool is manual arrangement. This allows you to freely move blocks of teeth or an individual tooth without the other teeth adapting to it. This gives a little bit more of a freer movement. This is the individual setup tool, so it's just like the global or occlusal plane setup tool, which is the first tool, except this allows you to alter each tooth individually. And then the final tool, this is only enabled if you have the freeform design turned on inside the control panel. This is available for all versions of the ThreeShape software. Individual morphing allows you to shape an individual tooth, and this is just like the morph tool that we have when designing under Crown and Bridge software. So to see the first tool in action, if I place my mouse on the actual arch themselves, we can see that it gives us a series of points where I can change the rotation or inclination of the upper and lower arch together in occlusion with each other. I can also raise and lower it. And if you see these green points, this is part of that free morph option. I do have the ability to scale it. So really at this point, I'm just going to alter and adapt my the setup of the teeth that was provided. You can scale it and change the rotation. Don't forget there are these slide options on the right hand side where you can actually turn on your wax rim, for example. Let's say if the doctor was to place or scribe into that wax rim where the midline was, you could align up your midline properly. Also, you do have the monsoon template, which I just made so it was a little more not so transparent. Then you can view that which is according to the midline that you created in the beginning of the design stage. Let's move on to the next tool. This one's pretty self-explanatory. You can see what options you have for moving. One of the common requests, like I said before, though, is if we could split the upper and lower arch and have this same option to move just the upper arch or just the lower arch, would be awesome. So the next tool, which is called the arch setup tool, this gives us the ability to move teeth, and the teeth around or adjacent to the tooth that we're moving will automatically adjust the teeth to that. This tool is helpful, but it can be easily carried away with. So I'm going to go and remove the upper arch. And if I click on the posterior teeth, we can see that it can change the degree. And it's really hard to see, but the rest of the arch actually adapted to it. There also is a way that I can have symmetric design. So if we see on the left-hand side, if I move one side of the arch, the other side of the arch will adapt to it, which is really helpful. You can see if I was to move this arch in, for example, you can see that the teeth slightly adapted to it. If I move it out, we can see that the anterior teeth adapted to it as well. You do have to be careful though, because let's say if I was to move some of these teeth in, it can actually deform and open up the bite in a way that you did not find desirable. I'm going to undo the movements that I made. I'm just going to bring this out a little bit. Also, you do have the ability to change the inclination of the teeth as well. The next tool is the manual arrangement. So remember, the definition of this is allows you to freely move the blocks of teeth or an individual tooth without the other teeth adapting to it. So now, if I wanted to move this block of teeth away, it's going to stay positioned there. Also, if I want to move a whole quadrant over, I can do that as well. But you can see that upper and lower arch, the posterior teeth are still linked together. It will not allow you to unlink those until we get to the individual tooth setup. So this tool just gives a little more freer movement during the design process. So let's move on to where it actually can be a lot of fun, the individual setup. So this gives us the ability to alter and adjust each tooth individually. So for example, I can come in here and actually have a full range of adjustment and design during that design process. We also have the ability, if I was to right click on any tooth, especially in the posterior, let's say if I want to remove the second molars, then I can remove this second molar, I can remove all second molars. And same for your premolars. I can remove this second premolar, I can remove all premolars, all second premolars from the design process. For this case though, we have enough space. I'm not going to remove any of our premolars or molars. There is also a tip, if you saw when I right clicked on it, on any tooth, I do have the ability to bring to, if it's an anterior, I can bring it to a mirror plane. And then every tooth after that, if I bring to mesial contact, it's going to adjust it so that it is in the proper location, or creating a proper contact point with the tooth adjacent to it. You see that tooth just moved back ever so slightly. Forward. And forward again. I also have the ability, if I was to right click on any tooth, I can have it bring in contact with the antagonist arch. So for example, let's say if I drop this down, if I was to right click on it, I have the ability to bring in contact with antagonist and it will raise it up so it's contacting. You can see I still have symmetric design still on. When I did that, bring in contact with antagonist for the opposing, after I dropped it down, it did not do the same for the other. So just be careful if you are designing with symmetric design on. So I'm going to go through and just make sure that all my teeth are contacting properly. I'm going to go ahead and just rotate this ever so slightly. Let's see how the lower arch, see how they're, if they're interdigitating properly or occluding properly. That looks good. Remember to rotate your model around from different views so you can have different points of adjustment. All right. So once again, I'm going to right click on central here, lower central. I'm going to bring to mirror plane, bring to contact with mesial, and do that for each tooth. It would be nice if they had an option for all teeth, or to apply to all teeth. Unfortunately, they do not. And do the same. So from here, the very last tool is our free morph option. So if you're used to the ThreeShape crown and bridge design software, it's going to have the same characteristic points that we had before for the free morphing, where you can actually completely alter and design your restoration or your arch as needed. Now remember, if you're using carded teeth, you're not going to want to have the freeform design option turned on. You'll want that turned off. Those are all the tools used during the denture design process. Let's go ahead and let's proceed on to the next step, and let's join our, or actually create the tissue to attach to the teeth. And we'll move on to showing how to nest and print a denture try-in. So from here, we're on the maxillary base. If I just hit preview, it's going to create the gingiva and it's going to attach it to the teeth for us automatically. We do have the ability to add a window into the denture base if needed. Also, you have the ability to draw a relief zone at any time during this step. So if I wanted to draw a relief zone, let's say on the rugae, it would actually create a patch of relief, and you have the ability to alter that relief thickness. So we can see that number set at 0.15. Also, the base thickness, when you're using the Dentca materials, you want to stay at actually 2 to 2.5 millimeters. So that was accidentally at 1.5. So I'm going to alter that. And also you can see that you have the ability to alter your baseline, again, your outline. So I'm going to bring that down a little bit closer to that frenum there. All right. So I'm going to select next. We'll do the same to the mandibular base. All right. From here, I'm going to change that base thickness to 2 millimeters or 2.5, depending on what you prefer. And then I'm just going to select next. Here's the options for the window and for the base relief that we saw on the previous stage as well. So I'm going to select next. It's going to merge the teeth to the base. The next step, and then we'll show how to nest. And then we'll watch that brief video on how to redesign a try-in that was adapted by the dentist into the patient's oral cavity. All right. We have the ability to sculpt on that denture base. So this is like a morph tool that we have in the crown and bridge design software. You also have the wax knife where you can smooth or you can add material. And of course you can take away material as well. So this is where you can actually spend quite a bit of time really adding a little bit of characteristic to the gingiva for the denture. I'm going to select next. From here under pre-manufacturing, this is all grayed out because it's going to be one monolithic denture. Of course, you'd want to do the same for sculpting on the denture base for the lower arch as well. But due to time's sake purposes, I'm just going to select next through. So the ability to alter the gingiva on the lower denture. Oops. After our denture is completed, you just simply select close. And remember to export out your STL file, we'll go to advanced, generate cam output. And let me show you the composer software side of this. So for this denture try-in, oops, looks like it's still loading. There it goes. All right. So for creating a new case inside the composer software, now this is for the Asiga 3D printers, I'm going to select on new. I'm going to choose my target printer. So I have a printer selected, it is not connected to the network currently, but I'm going to select on the printer I want to print with. Then I'm going to choose what material I want. So I already have it selected for the Dentca try-in material. And I'm going to put the layer thickness at 100 micron layers. From here, I'm going to select OK. And I'm going to add in my parts. So I'm going to find this under the manufacturing directory. Let's see here. Here's the one I just designed. I'm going to highlight both of my dentures. I'm going to select open, then open again. So look at it from a top point of view. Pull my denture, try-in dentures in. And I'm actually going to rotate these so these are vertical. I'm going to click and hold to rotate. Right click and hold to rotate. Vertical. I'm going to left click and hold on the dentures and bring them into the print envelope. And you can see there's still quite a bit of real estate left on the build envelope. So if you wanted to print more than just these two dentures, you could. I'm going to apply my supports. I'm going to just use the auto supports inside of the Composer software. Perfect. Now I like to print these vertical, and the reason why I like to print these vertical is because it's going to reduce the number of supports on creating that peripheral seal of the denture. The lower number of supports we have there, the more accurate that seal is going to be when trying to capture the vestibule. We can see that it's applying some supports to the actual anatomy of the denture. That is okay because that is going to be removed, and you are going to use a burr to actually smooth that down before providing it to the doctor for the denture try-in itself. So let's say we printed this and the doctor received it in, the patient tried it in, and there were some adjustments that need to take place. How do we go ahead and take this denture try-in and move it back into the ThreeShape software after the dentist has created some adjustments? So I'm going to show a brief video for this process. And you can find this, there very well could be a little hit and miss for the audios, and the video is all streaming. So if you need to find this on YouTube later, you can. This is found if you just Google on YouTube or search on YouTube, the ThreeShape Dental System Designing Better Dentures Using Try-ins. So go ahead and enjoy this video, and then we'll move on to a quick design of a denture base with designed teeth that you would glue in separately.
While watching this video, you will learn the steps for adding the information from a denture try-in to an existing order after having the denture checked and adjusted in the patient's mouth. The procedure described is valid for upper and lower jaw denture cases, as well as single jaw cases. Start the case as usual by creating the order. Scan the models and design the denture. The try-in denture design is manufactured using either printing or milling. When you have the try-in denture ready, send it to the dentist to check in the patient's mouth. Once the try-in denture has been checked and physically adjusted, you can scan it and add the updated shape to the existing order. The try-in model becomes available as a visual guide during all design steps for aligning adjustments with the original denture. To start the procedure of capturing modifications made during a fitting session, find the existing try-in order and right-click. On the drop-down menu, select Copy, and then click Copy and Reuse CAD Design. The new order will be created with all the settings and designs transferred from the old one. Modify the order, updating the assembly type and the material for the final denture. The order has the denture pre-design option already chosen, meaning that the try-in scan will be added to the scanning workflow. Now press Scan to get to Scan It Dental, having scanned try-ins in occlusion as the first step. Make sure that the Scan Try-ins from both sides option is chosen to enable the full scanning scenario. Otherwise, the system will capture vestibular side modifications only. The three-step workflow allows you to transfer the modified occlusion and the adjusted shape of the dentures back to the software and align it with the existing designs. Start by fixing both try-ins in occlusion on the scanning plate using Blue Tack. Then insert the plate into the scanner. For scanners with the auto scan option, the procedure starts automatically. When scanning is finished, align the upper unmodified try-in design to a new modified occlusion scan using 1 or 3-point alignment. When ready, click Next and go to the Scan Maxillary Try-In step. Mount the upper try-in, having the teeth facing upwards on the scanning plate using Blue Tack. Put the Blue Tack under the front teeth only during placement and angle the denture in a way that the posterior teeth are higher than the anteriors. Then insert the plate into the scanner. When scanned, trim the part of the scan with Blue Tack using the cutting plane tool. Now flip the try-in denture on the plate and scan its bottom part. Insert the plate in the scanner and scan. And when scanned, trim away the part with Blue Tack one more time. After scanning both sides, the software will align it together. You can adjust the alignment using 1 or 3-point alignment if necessary. Having the scan of the upper try-in ready, align it with the new occlusion scan using 1 or 3-point alignment. Then click Next to go to Scan Mandibular Try-In. Mount the mandibular try-in on the plate, having teeth facing upwards. The model has to be tilted in the same manner like the upper denture. Insert the plate into the scanner. When scanned, trim away the part of the scan that contains Blue Tack and click Next. Now flip the denture to scan the bottom side. When scanned, trim away the part of the scan that contains Blue Tack and click Next. When scanned, Check automatic alignment of both sides. Adjust if necessary. Then click Next to align the scan of the lower try-in to the new bite using 1 or 3-point alignment. And finally, after clicking Next, align the modified try-in to the unmodified try-in design. When finished, click Next and inspect the output for Dental Designer. You should have scans of upper and lower modified try-ins, vestibular scan, original preparation scans in a new occlusion. Now click the Design button to move on to Dental Designer and go through the redesign process. All settings from the previous design, like occlusal plane, characteristic point, and the upper and lower jaw boundary, will be transferred from the old design, and you can always adjust it. Use the models of the modified try-ins as a visual guide for the changes. We hope this was helpful, and thank you for watching.
All right. So from here, we can see it's fairly simple to scan a try-in denture that was altered and adjusted and readapt it for the design process. So let me go ahead, and I don't have a live case of that exact workflow afterwards to see how to adapt to it, but I do want to run through briefly how to design a denture with the base and the teeth separate and the teeth that are in an arch form. So let me first show you how to create the order form for that. Let's see, looks like it's still loading through. We'll give it a moment. There's a little bit of a lag. It looks like it's almost all there. Okay. So for the order form settings inside of ThreeShape, what you're going to do is it's actually the same thing. I'm going to select on Shift. I'm going to select on the first tooth of the upper arch that I want for my denture, hold the Shift key, select on the last tooth of the upper arch, and do the same for the lower arch. So I'm going to select on the first tooth, hold the Shift key, and select on the last tooth for that arch. Now this is where the difference is going to be. I'm going to select on gingiva again, just like I did before. Make sure you're on the denture option. I'm going to go over to the plus sign. I'm still going to choose model material, but the type of denture that we're manufacturing, this is where that difference is. So in the previous 2018 and previous software, this would be called glued in teeth arch. It is now called base with designed teeth. So remember that when you transition to 2019. And then I'm going to add my teeth as well. So it's going to be, it defaults to the artificial tooth. Remember, I have to change the material to model material once again. And then I'm going to bridge the teeth together. I'm going to just choose just as a single arch bridge. Remember, in 2019, you do have the ability to block the teeth in different segments if you need to. That's very helpful if you have a printer that has a smaller build envelope. We won't run into that issue with any of the Asiga printers, but there are other printers on the market that do have a limitation due to that. And then, of course, we would name this whatever you'd like, usually a case pan number, and then I'm going to call this base with designed teeth demo. From there, you'd select on scan, and the scan process is identical to scanning the try-in denture. That is no different. So I do have a case that's already set. It's actually the same case that we did with the try-in design. Let's go ahead and let's jump through that design process. I won't spend that much time on the actual denture design and defining what the tools are again, because we've already seen that. But remember, we do have to start with selecting our characteristic points, setting our occlusal plane, there we go. So tuberosity number 1, incisive papilla, tuberosity number 2, canine point 1, canine point 2, move on to the mandibular points, retromolar pad center, buccal, lingual, central ridge point, retromolar pad 2, center, buccal, lingual, and canine point 1, canine point 2. We'll select next. We're going to draw our boundary line to capture the vestibule. So remember, you have the ability to alter it to afterwards. You can click on the points. From here, I'll select next. From here, I'm going to draw my lower jaw boundary line to capture the vestibule again for the lower jaw. And I'm just left clicking around to capture these points or to capture this peripheral seal. All right, from here we'll select next. If you wanted to survey and block out according to the undercuts of the virtual survey, now would be the time to do so. We're just going to select next through. I'm going to apply the library that we had before. Now remember, we do have all the design tools that we had in the very first stage when we designed the denture try-in, so that does not change. I'm just going to proceed through that because there are a couple steps in the next stage that are important that we see. Bring that back a little bit. I'm just going to bring that out a little bit. All right. So from here, we'll select next. It's going to have us create our maxillary base. So remember, the base thickness for this needs to be at least 2 millimeters according to the instructions for use of the Dentca base material. I'm just going to select next through that. And same for the maxillary base. I'm only selecting next just because of time's sake. We have about 5 minutes left of the webinar. I would normally hit preview though, and I have the ability to adjust the outline, the base outline, around the vestibule one more time before proceeding on to the next step. All right, so in the very first section of the anatomy design, it's giving us the ability to alter the connector setting. So this would be the connection between each tooth on the denture itself. So remember, we're going to bridge this all together and print this as an arch form. You can print each tooth individually, but I promise you, you will never do it again because it takes so long to set each tooth manually. It's a pain. But we do have the ability to alter like the facial scale, lingual scale, and center scale. So facial scale will be how far, how deep this will penetrate on the facial aspect. Lingual will be on lingual, and then center is in the center. So for this, I'm going to actually reduce that facial scale to about 70%. When I hit preview, we can barely see the connector from a facial or buccal point of view, but a lingual point of view, we can see that connector. We do need that there to create strength when printing. But what I'd recommend doing in this design step, the coupling mechanisms, go ahead and alter these settings. You will dial it in to what you prefer as your preferences for that. So from here, I'm going to select next. It's going to give me a final opportunity to alter and sculpt on the anatomy. So I get to sculpt on this and design on this as one uniform piece now in the bridge form, the connected form. So I have the morphing tool, I have the wax knife, I have the ability to add attachments, do a plane cut, and then, which is really helpful, I have a context and smoothing. I can actually adapt the upper or lower arch, depending on what you want, and add an occlusal spacing to the opposing. And you can put that number whatever you'd like. I think default is actually 50 microns. And if I hit apply, anywhere where my upper arch was close to my lower arch, it would actually automatically move it out of occlusion. So if you were to accidentally design your denture teeth so that they were actually overlapping from the upper and lower arch, you could apply this and it will actually move it out of occlusion so it's not interfering, and you'll have a properly closed bite. So from here, let's select next. It's going to give me the ability to sculpt on my denture base. So this is where you can alter it a little bit. Hide a little bit of that connector there. Remember, when you do, when you actually lute the teeth together using the base material, you will have a little bit of extra material that will fill that in. So now would be your opportunity to go ahead and add any sort of characterization to the upper and lower base. So the second to last step is the coupling mechanism. This is actually what alters and cuts the base of the teeth. I recommend a coupling depth of 1 millimeter. And let me show you why. If you look at some of these 3D printed dentures, you'll actually see where you can see the actual teeth, the sockets of the teeth through the denture base itself. So if we change that coupling depth to a shorter number, the sockets of the teeth is actually going to be cut a little bit closer, and you won't actually have that transparent, some people call it a defect of seeing the sockets of the teeth in the denture base itself. So just something to think about. If I hit preview on this, it's going to show where it cuts it down. There we go. And then from here, if I select next, we have the ability to alter how much material I need underneath the base itself, between the teeth and the base. And also, if I was going to be milling this, I could turn on drill compensation. We're going to turn that off since this is going to be 3D printed. I'm just going to hit preview real quick so you can see how the teeth subtracts from the base, and we can actually see the socket for where the teeth will be placed. You can see where those sockets are now. Pretty cool. So from here, we'll select next. It's going to have us run through the same steps. I'm just going to select next through each step for the lower denture. I would have applied some more tissue there on that lower denture to hide the actual connecting piece for the lower teeth. And I also would have turned off the drill compensation as well. So from here we have our base and our teeth designed. From here I'm going to select close. Remember, I'm going to generate the STL files by right-clicking on the case, go to Advanced, Generate CAM Output. And then for adding the base and the teeth, I'm going to create a new job for the bases. So I'm going to change the material to the denture base. I like printing those in actually 50 micron layers. You can do it in 100, but you will spend a little more time finishing. I'm going to add in our parts. I'm actually going to select all the parts, open it. I'm going to create another tab, another job for the teeth itself. So we have denture teeth, print those in 50 microns as well. Move the base size out of the way. I'm going to cut that and paste the teeth over into the tooth build. All right, so for the bases themselves, for supporting, let's go ahead and let's place these so they're on the print envelope. I'm actually going to place these so these are vertical. So I'm going to rotate them. Look at it from a top point of view. And then I'm going to add my supports. So we'll do that for the base. Now remember, we're looking at this build envelope. This is actually from the Asiga Max 3D printer. Remember at IDS, they just released larger print envelopes. The largest print envelope comes from the Asiga Pro 4K. It's actually 3 times the size of this build envelope. So increasingly larger. So we went ahead and we applied the supports to the bases themselves. Now I can orient that base. Let me change this orientation. I don't like how many supports are applied on that. So I'm going to remove the support file. I'm actually going to make it a little bit steeper. And then I'm going to reapply the supports to that base. There we go. So that's protecting that peripheral seal there. All right. After we have our bases supported, we'll move on to the teeth themselves. So the teeth, it's actually quite simple. Let me auto place these real quick. I'm actually going to apply the supports on the bottom surface of the teeth where the socket is. This is going to protect the anatomy. I can print these vertical as well if I wanted to, but if I was trying to get these done a little bit faster, I'm going to print these horizontal to the build plate. After the printing process is complete, I would remove the supports, I would wash all the printed parts in alcohol, and then I would follow the post-process requirements according to the instructions for use. Now, if you want to see, or if you need to remember the instructions for luting the teeth to the base, if you refer to my first webinar, the first part, we actually seen the video there, and also there's a couple slides demonstrating how to lute the teeth to the base properly, and also outlining the proper curing process. But of course, as always, please refer to the instructions for use. So we just covered quite a bit of information. We're just a little over an hour. So if you have any questions, go ahead and please type them in. We saw the denture design software really at a glance. So if you'd like more hands-on approach, please feel free to reach out to us. If you're not a customer, reach out to sales so that we can go ahead and schedule a demo and get you logged in a proper method. If you are an existing customer of ours and would like to learn more about the denture process, give us a call so we can schedule a training session for you. Just also a reminder, July 25th and 26th is our hands-on denture course. We're actually going to have laptops for each customer that is in to design a full denture, print the denture, and of course post-process the denture. That's July 25th and 26th. As of this morning, there are only 9 slots available left. So if it is something that you want, please act fast so we can get you on that list. I don't see any questions popping through just yet, so hopefully I did a good job.
You did a great job. Thank you very much, Cory. Yeah, a few more seconds for questions. Do we have one there?
Yep, so we have a question. As a denturist clinically, when we do the try-in, if we want to close the bite, do we grind and modify the denture, or if the bite is off and the teeth are interfering, do we remove the cusp? Yes, so you would alter, you would just essentially eliminate anything that's opening that bite until you had the proper occlusion. You'd probably use like a blue mousse material to lock in that occlusion, and then when you do that rescan option, that very first step, and that try-in denture redesign, the rescan options, the very first step is actually to scan that upper and lower denture and occlusion. So yes, you would just completely destroy that try-in denture on the occlusal surfaces to get the capture the proper bite. I hope that answers your question.
And that is the only question. Amazing. All right, well, want to thank you all for joining us, and just as a reminder, this webinar was recorded and will be up and available on the Whipmix website usually within a day or so. Just go to whipmix.com and the webinar button, and you'll see it right away. And lastly, as a reminder, if you are a CDT or RG, your credit will be available. You will be contacted again within about a day or so. You'll be sent a very simple test, and you just go ahead and send that back in, and we'll get that certificate to you. So hope you enjoyed the webinar today, and look forward to seeing you all at a future Whipmix webinar. Thank you.